The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, Maria Boldry is joining us. Maria is a naturopathic practitioner. She is the owner of Lite Life Solutions in Northern Colorado. Maria joins us today to talk a little bit about the coronavirus, her experience with it, who she's talked to about it, her research that she shares so willingly with us. So I hope that this podcast will shed a little bit of light on what's going on, ease your fears, and give you some practical things that you can do to boost your immune system, not only today, but in the future to come. So welcome to the Naturally Inspired Podcast, Maria Boldry. Maria, thank you so much for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today.
It's so good to see you again.
It is. It seems like a different world since the last time we talked.
Everything has changed a little bit.
Hasn't it, though?
Yes,
it's pretty crazy.
It has.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you reached out today to kind of get together and talk because, you know, we're all in quarantine and it's pretty isolating.
Yes.
And we're being, you know, pummeled with news information and statistics and charts and data and all kinds of stuff about this virus. And it just feels good to connect with someone who I know.
Yeah, definitely.
And to just like have a conversation about this whole thing from someone who has 20 plus years in natural medicine.
I spent all day yesterday researching, just trying to just get a broader perspective for me and my family.
I bet. And for, you know, trusted friends, I'm sure that, and, you know, clients that you've had for years, you're a source for people to come to ease their fears. Right.
I do get a lot of calls just asking, hey, what should I do? What can we do?
Yeah.
And so my research yesterday really pulled up some key points that I felt like if we all had this information at the end of January,
right,
probably the trajectory might be a bit different. The everything we're seeing might be a little bit different. So I wanted to meet up with you and share that.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you're here today to do that because I think knowledge is power.
Yes.
Right. And when we gather the knowledge we need, we can ease our fears and we can plan and we can take actions that make us feel better because worrying helps nobody.
No, it doesn't. In fact, it stresses the system more and it makes you more vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So we can get a hold of some little nuggets here today and apply them in your life, you know, pick and choose what applies to you and leave what you don't need. But hopefully just our conversation talking about this scary virus that's out there right now can ease some fears and just make you feel like you're not alone.
Right. Exactly. Definitely. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Well, when I was researching yesterday, I like to go and research an article, but then go scroll down to the individual comments because, you know, individuals would give you raw information about their life and the experiences that they're having right now. So I did a lot of scrolling yesterday and I ran across information that I hadn't heard yet from any of my colleagues or in the media or anything. And it made so much sense to me. And when I started sharing it with colleagues and people who have run into this particular virus, they all concurred that some of what I was telling them was very accurate. So it gave me a really nice foundation of, I think this is, obviously there's, variances, but this is sort of like something that we can follow.
Right.
And what I found was that this particular virus has 3 phases to it. And it does seem to morph. People have said that. This is kind of like this morphing virus changing.
Right.
And so when I was reading, I found that this virus has like 3 different phases that it goes through.
Okay.
And so let's just go through, if you want to right now, let's just go through what those symptoms are in those phases. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do that.
And some of you who are listening may have had this and you may start freaking out, but don't. Let's just talk about it and get through it.
Okay.
So the first phase is mild cold symptoms. You may not stay home for this. You may still go to work. Mild fatigue. One of the main ones is headache behind the eyes. So people were coming into some allergy season. So people may think, oh, it's a sinus headache and my eyes feel, but it's a tired eye feeling, like you've been staring at the computer screen for a really long time, sometimes bloodshot. So just kind of that, just a headache behind the eyes. Still, you wouldn't necessarily stay home from work for that.
Right.
Could be
I hadn't heard of that one.
Yeah, it could be some discharge from an eye or weepy, just kind of weepy eyes.
Okay.
And then the other one would be like a mild sore throat, just scratchy, or a dry cough, like the tickle cough that just kind of catches you off guard.
Right.
So that's phase 1. And so many of the listeners that are listening in may or may not have had those symptoms. I did. I was reading this and going, oh my gosh, several weeks ago, that was me.
Right.
I had this headache behind my eyes and I just was like, oh, this hurts. And so I would just take a little bit of aspirin when I needed it, some quercetin, vitamin C. I just started kind of boning up on my stuff.
Right.
Then I read about phase 2. Phase 2 is noticeable fatigue. Now you're like, okay, wow, I'm really tired. Probably not enough though to skip work.
Okay.
Still just, you're just mild fatigue, maybe some body aches, maybe a fever. And if you have a fever, you may or may not, it may not be so high that you would stay home from work still.
Right.
But once the fever breaks, then you start feeling better. So it's kind of like this wave pattern. It's like phase 1, and then you feel better. And then phase 2, and then you feel better. Phase 3 is a tightness in the top of your chest, where you kind of feel like, oh boy, this is going to start going down in my lungs. And now the cough has changed, and it's gone from a tickle in the throat down to a tickle kind of in your sternum, where it's like, now you're coughing and it's more of a dry, hoarse cough. And it's more of an irritating one.
Okay.
But you still are not necessarily, unless it hits you really hard, you still feel like you're doing okay. But then the shortness of breath comes. And then that's where people start going, oh my gosh, I can't breathe.
Right.
So when I read all this, I was like, okay, I had a week where I had a headache behind my eyes, and I had my right eye was drippy, weepy.
Right.
And then the next week, noticeable fatigue. I remember there was a couple days in that week where I was like, wow, I could just take a nap right now. I'm pretty tired. I don't remember having a fever. If I did, it was internal. I didn't remember having a fever. Right. But then that next week, I remember it would just be, just a tightness and on that inhalation. So I truly believe that I was going through this. My daughter followed my husband followed that same progression.
Right.
So then I talked to several people last night and this morning and asked them. One guy had flown from Florida. This was a month and a half ago. He flew from Florida back to Colorado, and he didn't feel good, super fatigued, felt like he had some tightness in the chest. So he went into a clinic. They listened to his lungs. They sent him home with a prescription for an inhaler. Said probably it's allergies, or you might just have, upper respiratory. 2 days later, he was back in the clinic again because he literally couldn't breathe. They sent him to the hospital. They put fluids in him, and then he started to recover. So when I talked to him this morning and I asked, tell me about these other symptoms. Did you have any of these other symptoms? And he said, oh my gosh, I had every one of those.
Oh, wow.
So now we have this we can see the progression of this particular virus and what it does in the system. Right. And people will have varying ranges of how intense these particular symptoms are. Right. So when I started thinking about how maybe our country has been a little bit extreme in, curtailing this, it started making sense to me. This virus isn't more contagious, but it has an incubation period and
Right.
symptoms in the beginning that might be so mild that people will still go to work and still have the opportunity to infect other people.
Yes.
So you have the influenza, like let's say influenza A, that has a 1 to 4 day incubation period. By within that time frame, you're sick,
Right.
and you self-quarantine
Right.
and you stay, right? But with this one, it's kind of elusive because these symptoms are, can be very mild that keeps you going to work. You
Right.
can still go to work, you can still function, you can go to family functions, you can still go to church, you can do all the things that you normally do,
Right.
but you've got that 1 to 2 week period where you're contagious. So
Right.
you're just infecting more people in
Right.
that time frame.
And it's important to point out that everybody deals with viruses differently.
Yes.
Right. So this
Yep.
is the real concern is, 14 days of no symptoms and you're out and about wherever, seeing whoever, doing whatever, you have
Right.
no idea who
Right.
you could be passing it on to. And their
Right.
ability to come through that virus may not be anywhere near yours.
Absolutely. And I feel that there's so many people who aren't in touch with their body enough to recognize, oh, a scratchy throat and a headache behind the eyes, and oh, I've got a weepy eye. And, when those things were happening to me, I was taking those cues as, okay, I'm going to really start supplementing heavier,
Right.
therapeutic dosing of nutrition, because
Right.
I don't want this to go somewhere, or I don't want to be in a weakened state,
Right.
if another virus comes along and takes me out.
Right.
So, but I think there's many people, they just don't listen to their body well enough, that
Mhm.
they're having symptoms and it's not even symptoms to them.
Right. Right. They just
They're
kind of are used to plowing through stuff.
absolutely.
And so they don't, they don't tend to things. So for us here in my household, we're kind of the opposite of that. Is when we start to feel something coming on, we just like hit it hard.
Yep.
So
And that's what I did.
yep. So we start, upping the vitamin C. We
Yep.
start we start using colloidal silver. We'll start oregano oil or a mixture of both or whatever.
Right.
So that's our cue to kind of kick it into gear.
Right. One thing about this particular virus is it hits the lungs and then the heart.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah. So the heart comes later, but again, we're talking about less oxygen saturation. So of course that's going to affect the
Oh,
heart
I see.
initially.
Yeah,
Lungs
that
first,
makes sense.
then heart. But one thing that we don't remember is that the lungs don't drain. We have to expel.
Right.
And in this country, we're so good about quieting the cough.
Yep. Cough syrup.
Right? Yep. Cough
Yep.
syrup.
Cover
And
up
we
symptoms.
we don't go by the guaifenesin, which helps to, the expectorant that helps bring stuff up.
Right.
So there's a couple of things that I've done that I think are super helpful, and it's super easy, cheap. You can do it at home. And so I just wanted to tell you kind of what I started doing.
Yeah.
The minute
what is your family plan?
So anytime there's sinus, and I was doing this because of the headache behind the eyes, I felt like maybe it was sinus related.
Okay.
So I learned from a Chinese herbalist that if you have sinus or bronchial stuff going on, you can do vinegar steam inhalation. And so what you do, this is the recipe, you take 1/4 cup of white vinegar. So not apple cider vinegar, not the Bragg's with the mother.
Right.
You want white vinegar. So 1/4 cup of white vinegar, and to that you add 3/4 cup of water. So now you have a full cup of mixture. 1/4 cup of it is vinegar.
Yeah.
And you put that in a saucepan on the stove.
Okay.
And then you put it on medium heat. And when you first start seeing the steam rising up out of the pan, you lean over and you just inhale through the nose. 5 or 6, 5 to 10 really good inhalation breaths. Now, you don't want to let the water boil, only because boiling steam is really hot.
Right.
So you want to keep it at that little simmer, and you just inhale. That does several things. Viruses mostly are killed with some type of heat. In fact, there was a book from 1984 called Cold Arrest. And it was a gentleman who, he was a proponent of taking your hairdryer and making it the hottest setting, spritzing your face with water, and then inhaling the hot air from the hairdryer
Oh my
because that
goodness.
would kill viruses, right?
That's
So I
interesting.
didn't know that before all this. And then I went, oh, this is so interesting. So you're inhaling this steam, which kills
Yeah.
viruses, but also vinegar kills germs,
Right. Right.
right?
That's a natural cleaning agent,
Natural
right?
cleaning
Yeah.
agent. Plus, it's a little bit drying.
Oh, okay.
So when you inhale vinegar, you can actually, if your sinuses are full, you can actually feel your sinus cavities kind of popping open and all of us, and then drying, so that if you've been creating, mounds of tissue paper
Right.
because you're blowing your nose a lot, all of a sudden that will stop. But also you're inhaling those vapors down into your lungs.
Right.
So now you've got sinuses and lungs that are both being helped because of
Right.
this vinegar inhalation. So you can do that as often as you want during the day, as often as it feels good. Hard to get little kids to do that because it's like, it's like smelling a pickle. So it's hard
Yeah.
to, I know they make little steam machines that you can kind of cup over the nose and you can do that. But that's a really good one. That has probably saved me over the last 2.5 years from getting any kind of bronchial infection many times. Because the minute I get a tickle in the throat, then I start immediately inhaling vinegar steam.
Right.
And
Okay.
then there's another
Good to know.
technique that I use to help get you to cough. And you're going to laugh at me, but I'm going to demonstrate. It's
Okay.
called paw breathing, PAH.
PAH.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is an old style breathing technique back from the 1980s, but it really works on getting mucus and junk activated in the lungs to get it up and out.
Right.
So what you do is you inhale through the nose, and then on your exhale, it's forceful, and you say the word pa. So it looks like this. Don't laugh. Okay, it looks like this.
And you keep it going.
until you have to really breathe in. Okay, because I didn't cough means that probably I don't have anything mucus wise or really that is clogging up the lower lobes. We're all such shallow breathers.
Right.
I had a gal with influenza A with her mask came into the office, and she said, I don't have the new virus. I have influenza A.
I have the regular old flu.
I don't have the regular old virus. So she tried to do that paw breathing. She couldn't even get paw out of her mouth, and she started coughing.
I see.
So I told her to go home after we worked here. I told her to go home, do the vinegar inhalation, steam inhalation, and then the paw breathing, and to do it as often as she could through the day. Right. I did a home visit for her 2 days after that, and she could expel all the way to the end. And at the very end, it started a cough for her. So she had gone from a place of not even being able to say paw to being able to exhale the whole way. So what I started doing at the beginning of all this was I would do 5 to 6 inhalations of vinegar steam. Then I would do 2 or 3 paw breaths. If I could go through 3 of those without coughing, then I didn't do any more vinegar at that time. That was kind of what I did for the day. Right. Unless on that week 3 where I started feeling, anytime I felt that kind of restricted chest pressure in my chest, I immediately went and did vinegar breathing and the paw breathing. Got it. Yeah, vinegar inhalation and the paw breathing. And it just would calm everything. So it was allowing everything to kind of open up. And when you do cough on that paw breath, it's deep. You can feel, it's really getting some of the lower lobe stuff to come up so we can expel. Right.
Which is what you want.
Right.
Because you want things moving. And I think in traditional medicine, we come from this perspective of we want to, subside the cough. We want to just push it down, but really you want to get it going.
You want to get it going
up and out.
Well, and that's why laughter is the best medicine, because it makes us cough. You think about when you've had a chest cold and then someone makes you laugh and you start coughing. You're like, oh, don't make me laugh because I'm going to cough.
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want, you want to expel any mucus or anything that's hanging out in the lungs, just waiting to attract and be a great host for any viral component or bacterial component that you come in contact with.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
So,
what kinds of supplements? You said that you were kind of boosting yourself up on supplements.
Yeah. So the minute I, with the headache behind the eyes, since kidneys and eyes are related, I started kind of putting myself on more vitamin C and a kidney supplement.
When you say kidneys and eyes are related, what does that mean exactly?
So the kidney meridians come through the eyes. Yes. So a lot of times if somebody has eye issues, we can look at the kidneys. Yep.
Okay.
So from a Chinese medicine meridian standpoint,
Okay. Yeah.
definitely they can be interconnected.
Okay.
So in my thought processing, I started supporting more with kidneys, parsley tea, started taking more vitamin C. I think I started taking 2 to 4. No, I think I started out with 4,000 milligrams a day, going up to 6,000. Just, I wanted to really, make sure I was supporting. And
Can you talk a little bit about vitamin C? Because I've read a few articles that have noted vitamin C as being quite impactful with this
yes,
virus.
there are
And
actually studies.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
there's quite a few. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you have to build your tolerance up to vitamin C? Is that correct?
Well, the studies that they've done show that even an extra 200 milligrams a day makes a huge difference. Just an
Ah,
extra 200 milligrams a day. However, most of us are so depleted that
right.
therapeutic doses would be helpful. You can take enough to where you find your therapeutic dose or your tolerance level, which
Uh-huh.
is where you would take 4,000 milligrams every hour, every 45 minutes to an hour until you get diarrhea.
Okay. So that's
And
going to be the only,
that's the
you know,
only negative side effect.
yeah, the
Yep.
negative side. So you
And then
can't
you back
OD
off.
on vitamin C.
No, you can't. You'll just
Okay.
excrete it out. And
Okay.
then you'll go back a little bit, and then that will be sort of where you need the threshold of where you need to be. So
Okay.
the week that I did this with the headache behind my eyes,
Right.
and I got some just ascorbic acid powder, and
Yep.
1 level teaspoon is 4,000 milligrams.
Right.
At 16,000 milligrams, I finally felt my gut moving.
Oh my God.
16,000 milligrams. Yeah. So that was 4 level teaspoonfuls, so over a
Wow.
4-hour period, finally started to feel some digestive movement. And I
Okay.
thought, okay, that's my threshold. So
Okay.
that's how depleted I was.
Right.
And I supplement all the time.
Right.
So that kind of gives you an idea of what you can do. Certainly you wouldn't have to take that much because the studies show that even taking in 200 milligrams a day
Right.
can be super impactful. So what I've been telling people is 1 to 4,000 milligrams a day.
Okay.
Just start taking something just to assist
Right.
the foundational, level of the body so it can fight better.
Right.
And
There's
then
so
I
many
always add in
benefits of vitamin C anyway. And I think a lot of people don't realize that vitamin C is an antihistamine,
yep.
So
Well, especially when you have it in fruit, you've got vitamin C and you have the bioflavonoids and all of that. What, fruit, especially when it all comes together, is super anti-inflammatory,
right.
antioxidant. I mean, there's so many benefits to all of that.
Yeah.
So we lose that. Now, when you're taking just the ascorbic acid, obviously you're not getting the bioflavonoids,
Right.
but you can also make sure that you're eating your fruit every day,
Right.
eating something. Yeah.
Right.
So then minerals, I like to add minerals in. I have, this is one of my favorite go-tos. I just get it on Amazon. I just start putting stuff in my water all the time. So that particular week, I was really taking some good therapeutic doses.
Right.
You can also get the Sambucol brand, black elderberry. Now there's also a Sambucus, different brand. The Sambucol brand, I've researched them, and a lot of my colleagues recommend this brand because they have just done a remarkable job of making this the go-to black elderberry.
Right. What
A
does
little bit more expensive
do for us again? I know it's I know it's used a lot to stave off a cold or whatever, but how does it have an impact on our immune system?
Well, the black elderberry has all of the components that are needed for the immune response to be activated. So it really is just this nice kind of like here's your immune system, here's your immune system on steroids.
Right.
Here's
Okay.
here's the booster. And so really it
Got
activates everything. So that is just a really good go-to. Bees, any kind of bee stress formula, B
B
complex.
vitamins. Okay.
So one of the things that this particular person talked about in phase 3 is part of her recovery. She felt like the vitamin C, she was using the liposomal, but vitamin C and the NAC or N-acetylcysteine, which is great for helping the immune system. It helps to create glutathione. So again, it's the immune system, helps to detox the body. So those were the two that she really mentioned helped when she started feeling those upper respiratory or the chest compression, that feeling of heaviness is what she felt. She still went on to get pneumonia, but the other three members of her family didn't. So, yeah. And then the two elderly aunts that she said contracted this virus, they ended up passing away, unfortunately. So
oh my gosh,
she got to see, six family members go through these phases, and watch what happened all the way through.
Right.
So,
did they get tested?
Yes.
Okay. And they had positive test results.
Positive tests. Yep. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
and
I
that
felt
right there is such a good, tragic story, but very, descriptive of how it affects everybody different.
Absolutely. Yeah, because her husband and her two children didn't go past that second phase. They never had the heavy chest or the deep cough or anything like that.
Right.
So that's why I felt like it was just a God thing that I was directed to read this, because it just was like, oh my gosh, if in the very beginning of this, if they would have contacted people in China and said, hey, what are the symptoms leading up to this so that we can help people prepare?
Good point.
We would have been able to hear across the news airways or the media, hey, if you have a headache behind the eyes, drippy eyes, weepy eyes, you need to self-quarantine.
Yeah.
You need to just step away and take a couple of weeks off.
Yeah. Because I think the only symptom I heard about early on was a cough.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, super descriptive either. It was just like, oh, this virus is going around, and it's all about a cough.
Right. And everybody I've talked to since I read this yesterday at about noon, everybody that I've talked with, they've also corroborated that the headache behind the eyes, the weepy, eyes, one or the other or both.
Right.
Which could be allergies,
I wonder if that's just how some people respond. I know that sometimes when my kids get colds, they get super sensitive to the light, and their eyes are really watery.
Right.
That's not a symptom I experience ever.
And that can be a B vitamin deficiency too.
Oh.
And when we're under stress, we use B vitamins and minerals up, pretty quickly in our system. So they may need therapeutic doses of B vitamins if you feel like they're, coming down with something.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've just noticed that over the years when they get get a cold or whatever, that symptom's not something I'm accustomed to.
Right.
But they both get that. They would just want to stay in their rooms, and it's got to be dark because it seems to bother their eyes.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
Might be something to add in and see if you notice a difference.
Yeah. Good point. Definitely.
What else should we talk about with this?
Well, I want to talk a little bit just about the quarantine piece of it.
Okay.
Because I think that's a powerful explanation that you just gave there about how it affects everybody differently.
Right.
And we need to be really cognizant about that because, I've seen a lot, and I think it's changing, but, in the first few days when we really, I've been in quarantine since a week on Thursday. So what are we now? I've 10 days, 11 days.
Right.
I haven't left the house.
Yeah.
Because I took it really seriously. I started to research and look at how this thing was traveling.
Right.
And I took it really seriously. And that was it. My kids went to their last activities that Thursday, and they haven't been out since.
Right.
Because it's not, and it's not about us.
No, it's about all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. We're really at probably some of the lowest exposure or risk rate, really. Right. I mean, both my kids are athletes, they're healthy, we're all healthy. We don't have nobody's on any medication. We're probably the ones that would survive it, no problem. Right. But to me, I started to see how this was going to impact our healthcare system.
Right.
And how the overload, right? That now even somebody who gets in a car accident may not be able to be treated quickly and appropriately because of the overburden of our healthcare system.
And with this particular pattern that it takes on, by the time you develop, by the time someone is in a place where they would need a ventilator or they would need to be hospitalized, their body has already been setting up for this secondary infection of pneumonia. Everything has been falling into place for all of a sudden the lungs to be compromised.
Right.
And so if you've got all of these people kind of gearing up for that same phase at the
Right.
same time, and they're all needing this exact same equipment.
Yeah. I saw this like, 12, 13 days ago, I realized, holy, like this could, because we have 30-year-olds and younger people on ventilators throughout the country.
We do.
And it really is so individual. I can't,
It is.
I just had my genome done and did a podcast about my genetics, and we went through them and analyzed them. And it really hit me so hard how individualized we actually are.
Yes.
And each of us has little snips on our genetics that can make us a little bit weaker to certain things.
More vulnerable, right?
More vulnerable, perfect wording. Yeah, more vulnerable. And we have no idea.
We don't.
Right? We're walking around, we have no idea. And we assume that we're all, coming from the same point, right? We all have, oh, well, they look healthy, so we're all kind of coming from the same point. But, I learned that I had a weakness in my gene to make me susceptible to peanuts, to have a peanut allergy. Right. Now, I don't have a peanut allergy, but I do have a mold issue, right? Very, very easily bothered by mold. Right. And my daughter has a peanut allergy. So I passed that on to her. So anyway, my point with that is that you just don't know. There's these things kind of lurking in you that you really don't know. And someone may have a weakness in their genome that they're totally unaware of. They look perfectly healthy. They've never had to deal with it before. But when it comes to their lungs and how they are going to be able to battle this virus, they may not be equipped.
And then you take that and you add any type of nutritional deficiencies that they might be carrying.
Right.
Either because they're not bringing in the right something, or their body's not able to retain it.
Yeah.
Absorb, retain it, and utilize it as storage.
Right.
So that was another thing that hit me going to the store and seeing people buying just tons of really bad food.
I know. Totino's pizzas, a cart full of Totino's pizzas.
You got your toilet paper and your pizzas and you're good. No. I was happy to see a lot of the frozen vegetables gone. So that was good.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing is self-quarantining or staying home is only part of it. The other part of it is you have to address your immune system.
Yes. All the time.
All the time. Yep. And so the minute you start to feel mild fatigue, you need to start thinking, what can I bring into my body today to assist?
Right.
Because obviously my reserves are down.
Right.
Opposed to just thinking, oh, I was out gardening yesterday, I got a little bit too much sun, or, oh, I went to the golf course, or I did an extra mile on my run today, or whatever that is that we might think that we're just a little bit tired because of that. Our body is so adaptive. When we're tired and fatigued, like that inner fatigue, it's usually because the reserves are missing and the body is all of a sudden is under attack on some level, And if we don't do anything for that, then we have this progression of here with this particular virus, we get through phase 1, go into phase 2 and go into phase 3. And all of a sudden we have, a secondary infection of pneumonia.
Absolutely. And that's one thing to be, really paying attention to is that, optimum health is a thing that we should be working towards on a daily basis. And when this whole virus thing blew up, when we started really hearing about it from China and hearing about the deaths and stuff, the number one thing people were asking was, what can we do? Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, the truth of it is you should be already doing it.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yep,
and
exactly.
This is a perfect example of that, because we can't predict when things like this are going to happen. And everyone kind of just thinks that, we'll deal with it when it gets here. Right. But really, when it gets there, it's almost like it's kind of late.
Too late. So late.
You're backtracking now.
Yep.
You have much better, opportunity to prevail over anything.
Right.
If you're constantly working. And of course, there's no guarantees. You're still going to get sick, even if you're working towards optimum health all the time. But if you're, not caring what you're putting in your body, you're never supplementing, you're not going organic, you don't know anything about, the chemical exposures and things like that, then it's going to be a lot harder for you.
especially as you age and your resources tend to wane anyway.
Right.
So yeah, so
Right.
we definitely have to just, I've said it before, prevention with intention. We just have to be in that place where we're just looking at what can I do today? And if I'm tired today, I better be supplementing not only for me today, but for tomorrow.
Right.
Because my body's using reserves that I'm going to need for tomorrow too. So what can I do? So for me, the first sign is the minute you feel any inner fatigue and you're just not kind of up on your game, you need to be looking at supplementing heavier than you already are, because you just already need to be,
Right.
supplementing somehow.
And I think a good path to that is, you're noticing symptoms, your body's trying to talk to you. Go to your general practitioner, get your testing done, for your yearly exam, get your blood drawn. Look for things that are obvious that come back there first.
Right.
When you strike out there, you have to be willing to go beyond.
Right.
And that's going to cost you out of your pocket.
Well, and then what we have to recognize too is a lot of those labs, they are based on people who have labs. Well, who goes and has labs done is people who don't feel good.
Right.
So the ranges are for people who don't feel good.
Right.
So we need to look at, if we are falling within the range, we need to be on the high end of that range, whatever that is for that particular lab. We need to be on the high end, or we need to start doing some major changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to take responsibility for your health. And just because our healthcare system, our insurance system doesn't provide care to the level that we need it, the only way we're going to change that is by accessing that level of care on a regular basis.
Right.
Because then the other one is going to be losing money at that point.
Right.
And once they start losing money, then they're going to be willing to shift over to do what we need to do.
Right.
To get what we really need.
So true. Yeah.
So, this is a perfect example. This is a perfect time to make a change when it comes to your health.
It really is. Just preventative. Just because, like you said, we don't know when this could happen again.
Yes. Yeah. And
if you haven't started having symptoms yet, if you're one of those that you're like, nope, I'm feeling great, everything's changed, then pay attention to some of these early symptoms. And if you start having any of them, and start getting a tickle cough, start supplementing, start getting some better nutrition in your system so that you can thwart, and ward off whatever might be there.
Right. Along with isolation, like that's part of it, isolation, but also taking the action steps towards, boosting yourself up. Right. How do you see us coming out of all this?
I kind of see it leaving as quickly as it came in.
Okay.
I kind of see us hitting that peak, whatever that is, wherever that curve, wherever the wave is that we end up getting it to.
Right.
I kind of see us coming in and out of it. I think that because it's a combination of the coronavirus, SARS kind of combo, I think that we've all been exposed to portions of it. I think many of us have already built up some antibodies against it. I think that's why there's such a high rate of people that don't have symptoms or have super mild symptoms.
That makes sense.
Yep. As I think we already, a couple of the articles I read that were super misleading, and I saw them on Facebook too, was saying that because this was an animal-based virus that we don't know how to fight it. Well, if that were the case, then everyone that contracted it would die if we didn't know how to fight it. So our body does know how to fight. Right. Our body does know how to fight. We just need to give it the right tools and the foundation so that whatever it needs, it has.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's so important to remember too, especially when it comes to dealing with your fear with this virus. Your body is out for the good of you.
Yep.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yep. I mean, even if you're trying to, starve yourself down 20 pounds, and it won't have it, man.
Right. I know, right?
It won't have it.
Right.
It is constantly out for the greater good of yourself.
It is. And it's constantly adapting and utilizing what it can. And we just need to be in a place of trust.
Right.
And that's, unfortunately with this particular scenario, people aren't in a place of trust. And that's what's hard. So that's why we're not honoring the quarantine. We're not honoring shelter in place. We don't trust what we're hearing.
Right.
So this information gave me the insight as to oh, this is why we're not following the rules, because the majority of people believe, and I do too, that there's some sensationalism happening, and
Right.
there's a different agenda. There's some other agendas that are at play here, and
Right.
that this isn't more deadly than the regular virus, the regular flu virus, which
Right.
it isn't, but
The flu kills thousands of people.
But the incubation period is longer too with this.
Right.
So the chances of it getting out and spreading so that all the people are experiencing symptoms all at the same time, opposed to the flu, which is, a slower process through the year of people getting flu or during flu season.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what makes this different and makes it so important that we do the social distancing and we do quarantine and we, stay home if we can.
Right.
And just honor that. Don't take your kids to the store.
Right.
Pick one family member to go do the running around.
Yep. You pick one person.
And then the other thing that I read, which I thought was very interesting, is that regular soap is the best defense opposed to any type of
antibacterial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I read that as well. And that was interesting.
Yeah.
Although there's conflicting because they, alcohol kills it is what I also read. So, but I think just as a regular thing, we're hand washers more so anyway. It just feels like,
as warm a water as you can stand and good suds. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a fat contained. It's I don't know the right scientific wording for it, but you need the emulsification, which is what soap provides.
Right.
So breaks it down.
Today on one of my posts, for social media, I talked a little bit about, because I thought that this really rang true right now, is that, and you just mentioned it about how, we're not really believing, we're buying into, some people aren't buying in, or they're thinking it's too sensationalized or whatever. But an interesting perspective to look at it from this point of view is that, crises like this, or pandemics, or just stressful situations, regardless what they are, tend to bring out more of what we already are. So, it's like, if you're a worrier,
right,
then that's magnified right now.
So true.
Right.
So true. Yeah.
But if you're kind of like a chill, that's just, I don't really buy into that. I don't really buy into that, kind of a blower offer.
Right. Yeah.
Then that's where you're at right now too, but that's magnified.
Right.
So I think if we can kind of put stuff out there to help people align to where they should be.
And that's what I thought was important with this, because it made sense to me why we need to quarantine, and it gave it some validity on why it's growing so exponentially.
Right. 14 days.
14 days of us going to work and interacting, going to church, going to the store. It's just, we're touching so many more people. Instead of 1.5 people with the flu, we potentially could anywhere from 2.5 up to 200 people within that 2-week period, depending on what our social life is like.
Right.
Right. So that's why I thought it was so important that we just touch on this so that people understand. Then they can start looking for those early symptoms too.
Absolutely. And of course you want to, consult with your doctor as soon as you have symptoms and whatnot, but just to be aware that this is what you're looking for. And these are what, consistently down the line you're hearing from people, and this is what's out there. Cause you're right. I mean, imagine if we had this information back in January.
Oh my gosh. It would be so different.
Right.
It would be so different,
Powerful.
Yep, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for coming on the Naturally Inspired podcast today. It's wonderful having you. And I feel better just having talked.
Yeah. And I think we've got some really good, solid things that we can do, inexpensive, easy to do, that we can do not only for this situation, but for anything upcoming.
Absolutely. And to know that you should have that stuff on hand.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
I can't wait for our next talk.
Me too. Okay. Looking forward to it. If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.